Now, I'll start with the pie dough recipe again. I'm actually using whole wheat flour. What I love about the whole wheat flour is it adds a nuttiness that really matches well with the pumpkin pie filling. I start with 3/4 of a cup and also 3/4 of a cup of the cake and pastry flour. This ensures a tender crust. Then a tablespoon of sugar and 1/2 teaspoon of salt. I'll give this a quick pulse before I grab the butter. When you're making a crust, you can use any number of tools. If you're using a food processor, when you cut up your butter, throw it in the freezer for about 10 minutes. With just that hint of freezing on the butter, it balances the friction of the blade. What's important in using the food processor is to just pulse the butter in so that it doesn't work fully into the dough, but just breaks into little pieces. Although the technique with the food processor is slightly different than the mixer, the result will be the same. You can see with just a few pulses, those pea-sized butter pieces are perfectly blended in. So now it's time to add the liquid, 3 tablespoons of ice cold water, a full tablespoon of lemon juice, add an egg yolk. Just a little whisk with a fork and add it all at once. I'll pulse the dough again, but not to bring the dough fully together. I still want it to be a little crumbly. I'll bring the dough together by hand. That way, I always remain in control. This time, I'm shaping it into a disc because, of course, I'm going to line a pie plate for the pumpkin pie. I have to put this in the fridge for at least an hour to rest the glutens in the flour and also set the butter so it's easy to roll. I have one that's already rested, so I can get rolling. Gently flour the surface. And I just start in the center with small motions and grow the motions as the dough gets flatter. I've got a pie plate here, and a glass plate is actually my tool of choice. The glass conducts the heat quickly to help set that pie crust, but also you can check the bottom of the pie crust when it comes out of the oven to make sure it's baked all the way through. I sprinkle the bottom of the pie plate with flour and line it with the pastry, pressing it all the way to the bottom. And to trim it, so I want to trim it right to the edge and let gravity do its work. Now, what I do as a final step is just press the pie crust edge up. It actually holds the pie shell in place. So I'll let this chill while I get the filling ready. This is 2 cups of pumpkin puree. You can roast your own pie pumpkins, scoop them out, puree it and freeze it, or use the tinned. Just make sure you're not using the pre-sweetened variety. I'll crack 3 eggs into that. You need the eggs in there for that silky set that just really defines a pumpkin pie. 1/2 cup of light brown sugar, and I'll whisk these 3 ingredients together first. And now I'm ready to add 3/4 of a cup of evaporated milk. Evaporated milk has no added sweetness to it, but it adds richness without the need for whipping cream. 3/4 of a teaspoon of ground cinnamon, as well as just 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt. I love using fresh ginger in spiced desserts. So about 1.5 teaspoons finely grated ginger. Go. Now it's time to fill the pie shell. It's amazing how just a few minutes can set and firm up the butter, especially with rolled pie dough. And in goes the filling. We're gonna up the ante and make a beautiful braided trim for the outside. So I'll take this leftover dough and I roll it to the same thickness as the bottom of the pie shell. You can use a pastry wheel and a ruler to carve out 6 strips from this piece of dough, or if you happen to have an accordion pastry wheel, you can actually do it all in one move. I'm literally going to braid the dough. A whole egg mixed with a little bit of cool water on the outside of the crust. This will help the braid stick onto it and hold the pie dough in place. A final egg wash over the braid. And now to make a few little leaves, all I do is take a round cookie cutter, cut out a few circles, but then from the circle, use the same cutter, leave 1, leave 2, leave 3. And then I just use a paring knife and you can create the veins of the leaf. Give these a light brush with the egg wash. And I bake them on a separate baking tray than the pie, because of course they come out a lot sooner than the pie. I take a couple of bamboo skewers and then just rest the leaves on it. That way you get a nice natural curve. So both these and the pie are ready to go in the oven at the same time. The pie dough needs to go into a hot oven. I've preheated it to 400 degrees. After 10 minutes, I'll turn it down to 375. At that point, the leaves will come out, and then I'll leave the pumpkin pie to cook another 35 to 40 minutes. It is sweet torture to smell this pumpkin pie as it's baking. Now, it's important to let the pumpkin pie cool and then chill completely before you cut it. Have one already fully chilled, and this is where the leaves come in handy to cover the seams of your braids if you wish, or add just a few accents. And look at that.